Hi, Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 2 and my name is Imran Hakim bin Abdul Aziz. So for our group, we will present about topic 3, which is about the audit of purchase cycle. As an introduction of this topic, there are three things that we will learn, which is the first one is explain how to perform an audit on a purchase cycle. So overall in this topic, we will cover about the audit of purchase cycle, the audit of cash payments, and also the audit of balance of account payable. Also in this topic, we need to know two main products, which is namely as transaction and accounts. So the next one is we need to know on how the purchase cycles are going. In purchase cycle, there are 4 steps that we need to do, which is the first one, it will start with the requisition of goods or services, and then after that, purchase order is placed on that particular order. The third one is goods, then we receive from suppliers, and finally, the recording of all the bills and payments of that account payable. And finally, lastly, we also learn about the further audit procedures that will be performed specifically, which is test of controls and substantive tests. Next one is objective. In this auditing of purchase cycle, there are two things that we need to achieve. The first one is obtain sufficient and complete audit evidence for transaction and balance. And the second one is we need to know two key issues in auditing purchase and payable cycle. The first key issues is all purchases transaction are recorded and not understated. And the second one is all payables transaction are recorded completely. The figure below shows the movement from the transaction objective to the balance objective and lastly to the presentation and disclosure objective. All of these objectives are the things that we need to achieve from each of the phase of this auditing of purchase cycle.
Good afternoon, doctor and everyone. My name is Ajayi, metric number 275681. I'm going to present about the nature of purchases and account payable. The process of purchase cycle starts with obtaining requests to purchase goods or services, and after the purchase requisition form get the approval, the purchase order form will be issued. During the stage of receiving and billing, delivery notes and purchase invoice are required. In recording stage usually involve journals, accounts, and statements, while the payment voucher used to make purchases and account payable payment. Next is accounting system and control activities. We have to learn about these 5 functions in the purchase cycle. Now we look at the purchase requisition. The purchase requisition form is a document which is used by the employee in the entity to acquire the product or services on behalf of their organizations. It is required to submit to the purchase department in order to get the approval, and this is the first process toward providing an effective purchasing audit trial. During this stage, there is no specific orders were placed, and the risk of fraud is considerably minimized. It is difficult for employees to use the company resources to purchase for personal use. The validity of the request must be verified to ensure that no faxed transactions have been made and to ensure that the purchase transaction is taking place. Next function is preparing purchase order. The purchase order specifies what the corporation desires to purchase. The warehouse delegates the preparation of purchase order to an independent division in order to prevent dishonest requisition. After a purchase requisition is accepted and approved, the purchase department is then preparing a purchase order and distribute it to the supplier. Documentation of purchase order serves as an evidence that purchase transaction occur. Purchasing managers are in charge of pre-numbering purchase order and authorizing. Besides, purchasing officer execute an unbiased review of each order to determine whether the product order are collected and recorded. That's all from me. Thank you.
The third main function is receiving and storing the goods for inventory. Once the product's order arrives, the storekeeper must check the goods description and condition, then accept it if all things correct or reject it. Then the storekeeper should make a pre-number good receipt note (GRN) as an evidence of the purchase transaction and then sent to the accounting department to conduct an independent check. Next, approving supplier's invoice. At the time of the storekeeper receives the goods, the supplier of the good will send their invoice to the entity's accounting department. The staff should check all the information of the invoice as control activities to meet the audit objective include occurrence, accuracy, and completeness. The last main function is recording the purchase and liabilities. The control operations should be focused on the computerized system to ensure that it correctly and efficiently processes. It is because the entire accounting processes are automated and only authorized individuals will be able to change the data. The process of payment transaction in purchasing cycle involves paying the liability and recording the payments. For paying in liability, the control activities include separation of duties, access controls, and ensure complete, adequate, and accurate records and documents. While for recording the payments, the control activities is conduct periodic comparisons and reconciliations between internal and external accounting books or financial statements. All the control activities conducted are in order to meet the audit objectives, which are occurrence, accuracy, and completeness.
Good day everyone, my name is Olympic and my metric number is 28033. Now I will present about the process of developing the audit plan for purchase cycle. In the process of preparing audit plan for purchase and payable, we must carry out some risk assessment procedure which include understanding the entity and its internal control towards purchase and payable. By obtaining this understanding, we can determine the inherent risks such as material misstatement that may happen and design a further audit procedure to resolve the risk. Firstly, the first procedure that we have to carry out is understanding the entity to identify inherent risks. To prepare an audit plan, it is vital always to understand the entity's background and its environment. It contributes to the investigation of possible financial reports, material misstatements. As we know, the inherent risk can be defined as the error found in the financial statement that is caused by a factor other than the failure in controls. In the purchase cycle, the auditor must determine the nature of business based on the types of company's product and services and the nature of expenses. Besides knowing the entity business environment also allow us to estimate the risk associated with purchase and payable accession. The incentive of management to report expenditure inaccurately create a variety of possible inherent risks. For example, a business will understate their expenses or be able to get the targeted profit and disclose a high working capital level, and many transactions that would cause an impact of all accession. Therefore, the auditor must ensure that the company has effectively developed and implemented control over purchase and payable. Next is obtaining an understanding of internal control over purchase and payable. By implementing appropriate and effective internal control, a company can prevent inherent risks towards purchase and payable. We can carry out some ways to analyze our internal control, such as developing a flowchart and a written summary. Besides, an internal control survey for purchase and payable also can be conducted by an auditor to have a better understanding about internal control. Then, an auditor can look forward to the further details from management and review all the evidence to identify whether it is reported accurately and appropriately. To avoid unreconciled balance, monthly reconciliation between comprehensive record of account payables and the general ledger control account is also required. As a result, we can determine whether the internal control on the purchase and payables are performed effectively. After that is assessing risk material misstatement. The auditor evaluates the risk of material misstatement, which involve inherent risk and control risk based on the information received from an overview of entities, inherent risk, and internal control. For example, an auditor may decide if the transaction is vulnerable to understated related to the pressure to disclose high profit. Furthermore, the auditor should evaluate whether purchase cut-off procedures are effective in ensuring the purchase and payable are reported at the appropriate time. Once the risk of material misstatement has been recognized, the auditor should create an effective audit procedure. That's all for my presentation. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Okay, my name is Muhammad Fahmi bin Abdul Halil. My metric number is 2733090. Okay, today I want to present about designing further audit procedure. Okay, for this topic we have 2 points. Okay, for the first point we have the auditor view and report should be backed up with the audit proof. It has cumulative aspect and it's primarily derived from the audit methodologies used during the audit, including the previous audit. Okay, for the number 2 is the data which could be used as audit evidence was perhaps acquired with the help of a management professional performing further audit procedure. In this performing for the audit procedure, we have test of control and substantive procedure. For performing for the audit procedure, under that we have test of control. Okay, for the test of control, we have function for the number one is to gather adequate evidence to establish if the purchasing and account payable control are working properly. Okay, for the second one is to establish the necessary control and probable misstatement. The auditor must first understand the function inside the purchase cycle. Okay, but however, the auditor should cautiously draw conclusion because the test of control are only concerned about the number of misstatement and not the size. And the size of misstatement is assessed using the substantive test, of which the misstatement are significant when they are material. That's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Hi, assalamualaikum everyone. I'm Nisha Zimimi binti Abdul Aziz, metric number 273418. Today I'm going to present about the substantive procedures for audit of purchasing cycle. So what are they? Let's check it out together. So what are the definition of the substantive procedures? Basically, substantive procedures include the process of phasing or testing and audit purchase cycle, which provide the infallible evidence of the completeness, existence, disclosure, rise of 5 audit statements of assets and or accounts in the financial statements. This design of substantive procedure is important because it consists of the evidence which assert a company's financial record are complete, legitimate, and accurate. Let's take a look at an example. So this can be applied when a bank sends a bank confirmation to prove the cash amount due and also to contact the customer to ensure the claim balance is valid. Now, let's move to take a look on the types of substantive procedures. Okay, there are 3 types of substantive procedures, and the first one is analytical procedures. So basically, it has 4 procedures to do an audit. The first one is to determine if changes in account payable balances are expected, and as well as the second step, which to determine any fluctuation in purchase amounts and payable balance between the current year and the previous year. Okay, next, for the third one is to calculate the gross profit ratio, trend, and the average payment deadline. So if there any unusual change in the gross profit margin compared with the previous year, so there is possibilities of the misrepresentation of the purchases. So this way is necessary to carry out an analysis on the expense account. The second type is transaction detail test. This includes the process of document vouching and tracing. The vouching document is supporting document which contain a record of the purchase transaction. Meanwhile, for tracing is done through the traces of the order to validate the transaction. The vouching and tracing can be done through purchase cut-off test. For example, after obtaining the number of the last GRN for the final receipt, the auditor can select the sample of GRN before the last number and then match it with the purchase order dates. After that, we compare the agreement to purchasing journal entry for the current year to get the first GRN for the following year, and then compare it with the order according to the date, and then confirm it with the agreement with the purchase journal entry for the following year. And lastly, we perform the verification. Alright, now let's move to the third type, which is the test of details of balances. Okay, for the first one, which is about a monthly paid adjustment review. Here, auditor might begin with examine the adjustment given by the clients and analyze any unadjusted balances. Therefore, the auditor should be concerned about the absence of the accounting records. Next is confirmation of balances. This one is to get a complete and accurate list of suppliers while verifying the amount, name, address are correct so that the confirmation is given to the supplier or creditors. After that, the auditor may investigate the unrecorded liabilities to analyze the following period purchase and payment transactions. This is to determine any unusual reduction in expense and to examine any contractual agreements of liabilities. And after all, the auditor should also know the disclosure requirements and conduct a variety of procedures, especially when evaluating the list of accounts. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
So finally, about conclusion. As conclusion, audit of purchase cycle needs to determine the necessary of internal controls over the purchase cycle. Then as auditor, we should understand thoroughly the business function related to the purchase cycle. Besides, the auditor also needs to determine the justification related to purchase and payable accounts. And lastly, in order for auditor to achieve the objective in purchase cycle, auditors should know and do 2 audit procedures, which is namely as test of control and substantive test. So that's all from our group. Thank you.